Hello and welcome to Social Science Weekly, where we take the most important social science papers, giving you just the facts and none of the spin. The paper we're looking at today has the title, The Spread of True and False News Online. It was published in the journal Science back in 2018. The three authors of this paper are Suresh Vasugi, Deb Roy and Sinan Arel, all of whom worked at MIT at the time. Okay, let's get started. This paper is interesting because it touches upon a phenomenon that permeates many of our daily lives, the spread of information on social media platforms, be it true or false. Now this matters because it affects how we perceive the world, form opinions and make decisions, all the way from trivial matters, such as the type of coffee to buy, to more pressing ones like who to vote for. The digital era has radically transformed how we consume information. The abundance of news, its rapid spread and the blurring of lines between what's real and not, all makes it challenging to discern truth from falsehood. This in turn impacts economies, political landscapes and even responses to natural disasters. What makes this paper stand apart from the others is its comprehensiveness. It dives deep into the vast reservoir of data encompassing all verified true and false news stories circulated on Twitter from 2006 to 2017. This breadth of data across time provides solid evidence for the conclusions that the paper draws. Moreover, the researchers have painstakingly distinguished between true and false stories across various topics, controlling for stylistic differences along the way. Hence, the findings offer unique insights into the mechanics of information diffusion and how true and false news differ. Now, what does the data say? Well, a massive collection of tweets, around 126,000 stories, form the basis of the research. This was shared by approximately 3 million individuals across 4.5 million instances. Each tweet is categorized as either true or false, as determined by 6 independent fact-checking organizations. Now, these organizations showed impressive consensus with around 95 to 98% agreement rate on the categorization of false news. A rumor cascade, as they describe it, begins when a user makes an assertion in a tweet, which could be a text, a photo, a link to an online article, and so on. It then propagates when others retweet it or create an unbroken retweet chain. Each unique origin of the same rumor or news story contributes to the number of cascades. So if a rumor is independently tweeted by 10 people without being retweeted, it would form 10 separate cascades of rumors, each of size 1. The collected data spans all the way from Twitter's inception in 2006 all the way up to 2017. And it represents a very comprehensive set of all the fact-checked rumor cascades during that period. Now, in terms of the analysis of the data, a variety of metrics were used to quantify these cascades. Depth size, maximum breadth, and structural virality. Each of these reflects slightly different aspects of the rumor's diffusion process and the strength of it. The depth corresponds to the number of retweet hops from the original tweet over time, and the size relates to the number of users involved in the cascade. The maximum breadth refers to the largest number of users involved in the diffusion process at any depth. And the structural virality is a measure of the content spread across time. What makes this dataset so potent is its scale, the agreement among fact-checkers, and the thorough, multifaceted approach to the data analysis. However, it's also important to note that it has limitations. So while this research provides quite a granular view of rumor propagation on Twitter, it doesn't necessarily capture all the instances of news. It is confined to Twitter for a start and doesn't take into account any news information across different platforms. And It's also limited to rumors that were checked by the 6 fact-checking organizations. Now, this could potentially introduce bias, as these organizations might prioritize certain types of rumors. Also, the classification of tweets into binary categories of true or false could actually oversimplify the complexity of, just the nature of news information, leaving out kind of nuances and gray areas and uncertainties that usually categorize real-world situations. And lastly, while sophisticated, the bot detection algorithms that they used, they did find the influence of these bots to be negligible, but we still can't necessarily rule out that the behavior of bots on Twitter has an effect on news dissemination. Okay, now on to the findings. Number 1, false news spreads more quickly and extensively than true news. The paper discovered that false rumors diffuse significantly further, faster, and deeper, and more broadly than true ones in every single category of news that they looked at. And this effect was even more pronounced for political news when compared to those other types of news. Number 2, users who spread false news had fewer followers, followed fewer people, were less active, were verified less often, and had been on Twitter for less time. So this finding was verified by comparing a whole bunch of characteristics of the users that were involved in these cascades. So, people that spread this stuff were not high-profile, regular Twitter users necessarily. Number 3, false rumors were found to be more novel than true ones. And this novelty is one of the things that increases the likelihood of it being retweeted. So the authors calculated novelty as kind of a statistical information distance between all the different rumor tweets. And finally, number 4, emotional responses to those false news made the tweet spread more further, faster, deeper, and more broadly. And the emotional responses that were common in false news were emotions like surprise and disgust, whereas true news inspired more sadness, joy, and trust. And these emotional responses were evaluated simply by counting the number of emotional words in the replies to these true and false tweets. So, wrapping up, this study is about the spread of true and false information on Twitter, a phenomenon that intimately shapes our perceptions and choices. And it stands out largely due to its scale, with a ton of data being collected between 2006 and 2017. The paper's findings reveal that false news spreads more quickly and extensively when compared to true news, and this pattern was particularly pronounced in the realm of political news. Strangely, though, users spreading false news often had fewer followers, followed fewer people, and were just generally less active on Twitter. Interestingly, false news tended to be more novel than true news and tended to stir up more emotional responses as well. False news tends to invoke emotions of surprise and disgust, whereas true news often inspires emotions of joy and trust. Remember, while this study offers valuable insights, it's also important to recognize there are limitations. It doesn't encapsulate all instances of news dissemination. It's confined to Twitter and doesn't take into account any rumors that weren't selected for assessment by the 6 fact-checking organizations that they used in the study. Okay, we will provide a link to this paper and other interesting resources in the description below. If you found this useful, please like and subscribe. It really helps us out and means that we can make more of this content. And to keep up to date with Social Science Weekly, You can get us on all the different social medias. And that's it for Social Science Weekly, bringing you just the facts, none of the spin from the best and most important social science.